Know me, my name is Susan Schulman. I am the Executive Director of the North Suburban Legal Aid Clinic. Thank you so much for joining us tonight to talk about the clinic and how we've been doing in the age of COVID. Just to give you a brief overview of the format for tonight, I'm going to do a brief introduction, and then I'm going to introduce each of our directors who are going to talk about the practice and how their practice has been impacted by COVID. And then we'll be taking questions. And, I think we've got a manageable size here. We could do this one of two ways. You guys could either submit questions via the chat and I could read them out, or you guys could just raise your hand and I could kind of point to you and you could just ask your question. So is there any preference? Why don't I call on people? I think it's small enough that I can do that. Does that work? Okay. If you want to submit it, but by the way, if people want to submit it via the chat, that is fine too. I'm happy to read it out. Okay, so a brief overview of the clinic and where we are today. The clinic was founded in 2015. So this is we are celebrating our 5-year anniversary this year. And what a year to celebrate your 5-year anniversary. We were founded in response to a 2013 needs study that found that there was a gap in legal services in the areas of immigration, domestic violence, and housing in the Highland Park Highwood area. And so our mayor, the fabulous Nancy Rodering, who is also our founder, said we need to have a clinic in Highland Park. The clinic was founded, that was back in 2015 when we were known as the Highland Park Highwood Legal Aid Clinic. At that time, we had a part-time executive director, a budget of about $60,000, and I think 70 cases in 2015. Fast forward to today, our budget is over $1 million. We have 14 people on staff. And it is looking very likely that we're going to hit, if not exceed, 1,000 cases this year. So tremendous, tremendous growth in 5 years. COVID has most definitely had an impact on the clinic. It's certainly impacted our staff. There are maybe 3 to 4 people in the office at any one time. Everyone else is working from home. We do staff meetings via Zoom. We do intakes via Zoom. So we miss each other very much because we all get along quite well. So that has definitely had an impact. And then looking at the 3 practice areas, we've also seen an impact in all of those areas as well. Immigration, I think the immigrant community has probably been one of the hardest hit communities with respect to COVID. Domestic violence, we've seen an increase of 44% in the calls that we've received. And then in housing, we did not have actually a director of housing prior to COVID. And COVID, we saw our cases increase 300%. So in June, we brought on our director, Noreen Kane, who you'll be hearing from tonight. And we are looking very seriously at hiring another person because she was at capacity right away. And in fact, all of our practices are at capacity. So now I would like to turn it over to Rebecca Weininger, our Director of Domestic Violence, and she's going to give you an update on domestic violence practice.
Thanks, Susan. Good evening. Can everybody hear me? Yes. I'm very grateful to be with you, and I'm grateful you're taking the time to come and listen to the work that we've been doing and give us a chance to let you know how we've been responding to COVID and to a world that's a little bit crazy. What we know is that the incidences of domestic violence, including intimate partner violence and child abuse, skyrocket during stay-at-home orders. What we know is that the calls to the DV practices, as Susan said, have gone up 40%. Calls to area shelters have gone up 600% since March. And those are really devastating numbers. And what this tells me, because these numbers have gone up, even while the access to resources shrinks during stay-at-home orders, is that there's got to be a lot of people out there who need us and aren't getting to us. Many more people are, but there are many, many more that haven't gotten to us. So what COVID has affirmed to me is that domestic violence traverses borders, it traverses race and ethnicity and class. And so the challenge that we have had is to find clients where they are despite innumerable and diverse obstacles. So we've been dedicated to being really creative in reaching people. We came up with a false email address, false only insofar as it looks like it's to an individual and not to the clinic. And we have publicized that if you email that address and ask for a recipe, my favorite recipe, then we'll know that you're in danger and we'll know to be creative about contacting you. We also pitched a project to the governor, which was accepted and on which we're working right now, which is to create a code word throughout all of Illinois where people can walk into pharmacies and other medical service providers, say this magic code word, and get immediate assistance for intimate partner violence. We've created new partnerships that we hadn't thought of before across agencies and even across disciplines to try to reach more people. We have been taking calls at all times of the day and night. We've gotten calls from people in the middle of the night, and when we say we, I mean me, because that's when abusers are asleep or abusers are working third shift. And I will take those calls any time of day or night whenever somebody needs to reach me. So there are unique challenges that we see, particularly in the suburbs. I speak often as possible about the unique challenges to reaching people in the suburbs, particularly because abusers bring their victims to the suburbs intentionally to cut them off from people and to cut them off from resources. And so the last thing I really want to talk to you about tonight is this intersection that we've seen of the three practices because of these unique challenges in the suburbs. If I didn't have Leah and if I didn't have Noreen, I could not do the work that I do, because the intersection of domestic violence, immigration, and housing is really dynamic. And the women on this call and the women that I work with every day make that possible. We, for instance, right now, we have 4 cases just this month of women on dependent visas. That means they came here as spouses of people, of workers who came in specifically to work, whose abuse after arriving here has been horrific. So we have been able to get them emergency legal help, emergency legal protection through emergency orders of protection, immigration help, housing needs, because they have no knowledge of their finances. And some of them, we have 2 of them who are being actively kicked out of shelters with their young children. We have women who have overcome amazing stigmas to admit that they are victims, who have not had control over their lives or have never made a decision for themselves in 30 years. I have right now 5 child rape cases where moms are looking for places to move so that their children are not re-traumatized sleeping in the beds in which they were victimized. Without these other directors, without these other practices, without this incredibly dynamic practice that Susan has built, and help from the new social worker that we have, we could not help the people that we help. So one thing I would like to say in closing, and obviously I'm happy to take any questions, is that recently in an interview that I did, I was asked what keeps me awake at night. And I think that what he was expecting was a horror story of things that I hear every day. But in fact, those are the people that really inspire me. Those aren't the people that bring me nightmares. The nightmares that I have are the people that I don't hear from. The things that keep me awake at night are the people that don't know that I'm here, that don't know that they're not alone, and that don't know that they can reach out to me. And so I'm grateful to be here tonight, and grateful for any word that you can spread that we're here, we are working at capacity, and we can help anytime under any conditions. I would like to introduce now one of my favorite people in the whole wide world and the director of our immigration project, Leah Kim.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Leah Kim. I'm the director of the immigration law practice of the clinic. I've been here since November 2017. I've practiced immigration litigation for going on 12 years now. And this is all I know. And I'm happy to be part of this organization because I love it. I love what we do, and I love the people that I work with. So when COVID hit, it did have a significant impact on the undocumented immigrant community, especially the Spanish-speaking community here in Lake County and suburban Cook, because we were seeing a high number of the Spanish-speaking community getting hit with COVID because they were working as essential workers in factories, housing, they were living in close quarters with each other. And, there was food insecurity, job insecurity, unemployment. They weren't eligible for a lot of, the stimulus because they were either mixed status or they were filing their taxes with an I-10 or not without a social security number. So because of this, and because people were in survival mode, we thought that the immigration and trying to get immigration relief would go on the back burner. But I was wrong. And our numbers have been high. And we've been having a lot of cases come in because we've been seeing a uptake of people who are eligible for citizenship to file for citizenship because they realized that being a lawful, they wanted to be a citizen in order to really secure their immigration status in the United States. Those who had no status, they're reaching out to get full immigration screenings to see if they were eligible for any kind of status because they could see clearly, especially during COVID, that their insecure and their insecure immigration status is really affecting them in every way. So we did what we could. We answered phones, just like Rebecca said, after hours, weekends. We did presentations. We joined partnerships with other organizations to do Zoom presentations on public charge. All the things that are changing with DACA. DACA and public charge during the past several months have seen so much litigation, and they change constantly. So we are always on top of the changing policies and procedures with immigration to inform and educate our community. So presentations to other organizations. We could before COVID, we had 7 off-site immigration clinics. We would go to various locations in the suburbs to do in-person intakes. Those turned all virtual in March, but we're still doing these clinics. I had one last night with one of our community organizations until 8 o'clock at night, talking to a DACA student who got married to her wonderful fiance, and now she's eligible to file for her green card through her marriage. So I talked to her last night about what we would need to help her legalize her status after being here since 2002 without any kind of lawful status. During this time, we've also grown our off-site clinics to now having almost 11. And it is amazing because they see the need for their students and for their community members. And we're there virtually, but we'll be there to help their clients and help their community. And what I've seen with our community members and our clients is that they're so resilient and they really want to give back to us. During this time, we were able to get some really hard fought approvals, and our clients have shown us their love and appreciation by bringing us food and baked goods. Even during the times of COVID, we've been getting that. I've been missing out, so I miss that. But those who go to the office get these lovely baked goods. But one story that really sticks out to me that I want to share with all you all tonight is when COVID happened in March, and things were getting shut down, the consulates overseas were getting shut down. So no interviews, no non-immigrant, no immigrant interviews were happening. And we had a client, he is a US citizen, and he was petitioning for his wife and stepson in Mexico. And he was suffering from cancer. So we were able to expedite his case, and his wife was having an interview on a Thursday. Well, the consulate shut down that Tuesday. And we didn't know what would happen. And we made some phone calls, did some, shot out some emails, but it's almost impossible to get a hold of a live person at the consulate. Luckily, a consulate officer saw the application, saw that she was in queue for interview, and saw that her US citizen husband was suffering from cancer. He called our client, said, come in for your interview. Just come in right now on that Tuesday before they shut down. At first she thought it was a fraud because who is this person calling me to come to the consulate right now? She didn't believe him, but she went. But the security guards wouldn't let her in because she wasn't on the list. So she was turned away and she went home defeated. But that officer called her again saying, why didn't you come in? And she told the officer what happened. And he said, okay, I'll put you on the list, come in tomorrow. So she said, okay. She went the next day, they had the interview, and her immigrant visa was approved, and she got one of the last flights from Mexico into the United States to be with her husband. And when he came in, when the client came in, she called our office thanking us because she was really one of the last people to come in with an immigrant visa before COVID shut down everything. And they have just recently reopened. And the husband is still in cancer treatment, but she can be here to support him. And that just fills me with so much joy and happiness because COVID has been so tough for us, every single one of us, regardless of our status, regardless of our background and our, everything. It's been so tough mentally, emotionally, physically. It's like, but to get these bits of joy gives us what we need to dig a little deeper and to help the next client because they need it just as much. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I want to introduce Noreen. We have the same last name. We're not sisters, but I consider her a soul sister. She just joined us this June, and she fits in so perfectly, and we're so happy to have her as our new Director of Housing. So Noreen.
So hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name's Noreen, and so I just started in June in the middle of the pandemic. So my interview with all of these lovely ladies was via Zoom. I went in one day to the office to pick up my laptop, and that was really it. So my whole relationship with everybody has been via Zoom, which is truly a product of the times that we are in right now. So I've had the excitement and also, this of growing a housing practice in the middle of a housing crisis. Obviously, I think in the suburbs particularly, affordable housing has always been an issue, and COVID-19 has certainly highlighted that, the problems of the working poor. It's a similar story that I've heard from many clients, that they have always worked, always paid their rent on time. They've never been a bad tenant. They've always had a good relationship with their landlord. And through no fault of their own, they lost their job in March because of COVID-19, and they haven't been able to afford the rent. More recently, people have been able to go back to work, but the stories that I've heard are that they can't go back to work because they have school-age children at home who are doing remote learning. They have no childcare. A lot of single moms who are not able to work at all right now because they have to take care of their kids. A lot of the clients that we serve are in jobs, service industry jobs, where they can't work remotely in the way that I've been able to do. And so they have no real other option to bring in an income at this time. So, usually housing law and evictions, it's the kind of law that doesn't usually change much. It's pretty much tried and true. It keeps going. But lately, the situation changes week to week. And it's been a constant state of trying to keep people informed of what's going on. So as many of you probably know, there's a moratorium on evictions right now in Illinois. The governor is extending the current moratorium, which expires on the 19th. He's extending it for another 30 days. And it is likely that it will be extended through the end of the year because there is also the CDC federal moratorium that's also going on right now. So the federal moratorium is supposed to kick in if you don't have your own state moratorium. And that's supposed to be specifically for non-payment of rent cases. Our Illinois state moratorium prevents any evictions from being enforced. Court is open, eviction court is open, and people are getting evicted for cases that were pre-COVID-19 or for other like health and safety issues, not non-payment of rent cases. Those can also go forward right now. However, all evictions cannot be enforced by the sheriff. So for while the moratorium lasts, people can stay housed. I think the problem that everybody is realizing is that COVID-19 is affecting everybody far longer than we had originally thought. People thought it might just be a few months. We'd be back to normal in the summer. Then it turned into maybe this fall. And obviously, I think we can see that the effects of everything are going to continue for some time. So a lot of what I've been doing is, helping educate people to understand what's going on, because it's crazy change right now. So it's explaining to them what their rights are. And it's also talking to a lot of landlords and property managers, and also explaining to them what is happening in Illinois and what's lawful and what's not lawful. We foresee, once the moratorium is lifted, just a huge influx of eviction cases, which is, really frightening to me. But a lot of what we're trying to do is to hook people up with things like rental assistance, to try to stave off any eviction, and to try to keep people housed stably through this period of time. The other problem that we see, particularly with the immigrant population that we serve, is that many of them, unfortunately, don't have they don't have written leases. They pay by cash. They have no receipts. So there are people who don't have the same protections that are offered for people who do have written leases. For example, the state rental assistance is being doled out shortly. If you did not have a written lease, you were not eligible for those services. So a lot of our immigrant population, unfortunately, are facing more problems than our other clients. So that's definitely an issue of concern. The other problem is obviously illegal lockouts for clients who are undocumented specifically. Their landlords, know that and may take advantage of that situation by illegally locking them out, because they know that they can't pursue an eviction at this period of time. So it's kind of a crazy, ever-changing world right now in housing, and we're hoping to grow our practice, to hopefully hire another staff attorney so that we can help all of these people that we know really are going to desperately need our services.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. Now I'd like to open it up to everyone who's come here tonight and see if there are any questions. So just kind of raise your hand, either with the little emoji or with your actual hand. I know there must be questions.
While you think of your questions, I'm going to jump in.
Nancy, we'd love to hear from you. This is our board chair and founder.
I just want to welcome those who just are now becoming introduced to the Legal Aid Clinic, and want to in particular welcome Lauren Beth Gash, who was with us at the very, very beginning, sitting around the table as we were trying to figure out how to meet the needs of the most vulnerable parts and members of our community. And I think it's important to note that the very first decision that the clinic board made was to provide services to folks who lack documentation. That makes us unique. There are not a lot of opportunities for people in that situation to obtain access to justice. So that was the very first decision that this group made. And then you may be wondering, why are we so focused only on domestic violence, housing, and immigration? Again, it was, when are people at their most vulnerable? When they're at risk of losing their families or their homes or potentially their lives. So that's why those three practice areas are our focus. As we continue to grow, we continue to reach capacity. Pretty much every time we add somebody new, we are back at capacity. And so what that says is, even pre-pandemic, this was a huge need that wasn't met in our community. And now our community is from Northern Cook all the way up to Wisconsin. But now during the pandemic, we've seen an exponential rise in these cases. It breaks my heart, but we know that the needs are there. So that's why I just wanted to sort of share the founder's view of how we got here. And again, welcome everybody for joining us tonight. Really appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you. And I just want to add that we would not be here without Nancy. She has just been such an incredible guiding light throughout all of this. So thank you so much, Nancy.
We would not be here with any of the wonderful people on this team. We really are. 5 years to go from pretty much zero to where we are is unbelievable. And it's now above 1,000 cases. And specific to what you've heard this evening, we know that we've had a 300% increase in our housing cases, an exponential rise, unfortunately, in our domestic violence cases. And we know that throughout all of that is this common thread. Oftentimes, of immigrants who don't have documentation, who are at their wits' end and have absolutely nowhere to turn. So it's our pleasure and our honor, really, to provide these services to the most vulnerable members of our community.
Thank you. Could not have said it better myself. Okay, do we have questions? Nothing has popped up on the chat. Oh, I see Leslie. Okay, awesome. Leslie, please ask.
Just gonna unmute. To our directors, you are unbelievable. We're so grateful for you and all you've done. I mean, it's unbelievable, and we're lucky to have you. I was just wondering, I know that we recently, one of the leaps the clinic has made is expanding our geographic area that we cover. And I was wondering what kind of, how you've seen that impact as you've seen our caseload grow. Is it primarily from still Highwood and Highland Park, or are we seeing an increase in cases from that geographic area that we've expanded to as well?
I'll start on that answer, and I'll let the directors chime in as they want to. So we definitely get, I mean, the cities that give us the most cases are still Highland Park and Highwood, but I would say that we're seeing a lot of cases from Niles Township. We have a partnership with them. We're seeing an increase of cases from the New Trier Township. Actually, a lot of cases from Waukegan, which is interesting because Prairie State Legal Services is up there, but they don't do undocumented, and we do. So that's made a big difference there. We're seeing, guys, if you want to jump in and tell me where else we're seeing cases. I know I look at the numbers from time to time. A lot of cases from Palatine Township, actually. We've had a really productive partnership with them, with Partners for Our Community, and they send us a ton of immigration cases. So that's.
I just want to say that what happens is, as soon as we spread into a new area, we get referrals from places that we didn't reach out to directly. And what that communicates is that, you know, the word spreads and the need is so great that, you know, Alethea, the you know, invaluable, I can see she's here, so I'm just going to tell her how much I love her, puts the appointments in the calendar and includes the referral source. And there will be referral sources that I have never personally reached out to. And so I know that you know, everyone is asking everyone else, how can I get this help? How can I get this help? And so as soon as we make any inroads into any community, we start seeing rushes of clients from those areas.
I think that's right. So anyone else want to jump in on what they've seen?
I just want to add that I think there's also just a huge gap of, there's just no legal services that handle the North Suburban Cook County area, and definitely not a lot of referrals for undocumented clients in Lake County. They're just, and it's, you know, like if it's unfortunately a case where we can't help somebody, I am often troubled to think of another place that I could refer them, because there's really such a huge gap. And if you're outside of the city of Chicago but live in Cook County, it is very difficult to find legal services help. It really is. I think there's this feeling that the people who live in Chicago are the most disadvantaged, and that people who live in the suburban area have more resources. And it's frankly not true for legal services. I think it's actually quite the opposite.
I couldn't agree more. There are times that we get people, in fact, we're struggling with this right now. We have a case in Kane County. This is not the first time. The legal aid will not help. They don't feel any obligation if they can't take the case to find somebody who can. And that's the same thing for DuPage, by the way. So there is in name these other legal aid clinics, but they don't feel any responsibility to, once they know of somebody, to make sure that they get hooked up with somebody that can help. We do. If any case comes into the clinic and we can't help, we feel an obligation to not let go until there is that warm handoff to somebody else. So even when there is, at least in name, a clinic to whom which we'd be able to turn, we 9 times out of 10 are finding out that they will just say we're at capacity and we wash our hands. And that is so distressing. We're doing this right now, and this woman is absolutely eligible for relief. And I just can't find anybody. Michelle finally found somebody today, but the legal aid clinic there was not helpful at all to help us find someone. that could help her with an emergency petition. She is living in a shelter with her 2 children. The shelter is kicking her out, and her exceptionally abusive husband, who has been indicated by DCFS for child abuse, not even child neglect, child abuse, is living by himself in his house. So absolute basis for emergency relief for exclusive possession of the residence, and I can't find anybody to do it. And that's heartbreaking. So we stay in contact with her. I talk to her, Michelle and I talk to her almost every day.
All right. Yeah, tough decisions. It's hard. Leslie, does that answer your question? I think that gives you some idea.
Can I ask Rebecca why
Yes.
can't we handle the cases? Is it because of geographic? Is that usually why do we usually have to turn people away?
That's usually the only reason that we have to turn people away. There's definitely times where we're at capacity that we can't take a divorce case because of the amazing amount of resources that each divorce case requires. And then we reach out to our amazing core of volunteer attorneys to try to fill that gap. But the only reason that we would need to hand off completely is because we just don't appear in Kane. Now, is it possible to do it during COVID? Sure, because the courts are open via Zoom. The problem is that I have a strong ethical obligation not to take a case that I couldn't finish if the courts open up. I can't send somebody to Kane. It is just too much of a resource suck when there's only 3 of us to send somebody out to Kane County. And so taking a case that could last 6 months and it could last a year, and somebody would be required to appear in person when we don't appear there, now, that to me is just not acceptable. But I don't let go of that person and that case until I find a suitable replacement, until I find suitable counsel.
Well, our PR must be working if somebody in Kane County is finding us, right?
Oh, we get calls from Kane, we get calls from DuPage, absolutely. And maybe it's because I am relentless in finding help. And maybe it's because the other legal aid clinics just say, I'm sorry, we're at capacity, we're not taking your case. But I like to think it's because people know that they will, that we will receive them, that we will talk to them, that we will believe them, that we will help them, that we will find a way to do something to make their lives better.
Leah, I think you got a case from downstate once, didn't you? Didn't we get a call once from downstate?
Well, yes, Carbondale. We have a client from Carbondale. And then the courthouse in Jefferson County, which is way down south, actually called us to see if we can handle their, they have walk-in pro bono hours at the clerk's office, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon. And she asks if they can send us cases for immigration. So we got some referrals from them. And I remember I had to Google them and do a map in a Google map to see how far it would go to actually do it in person. And I think it was like 4 hours one way. And I'm like, okay, Susan, road trip. But this was, of course, pre-COVID. But yes, we do sometimes get phone calls from them. And then we've gotten phone calls from clients in Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan. I had a couple from Michigan. And I hate saying no. And I know it's a completely outside of our geographic area, but it was a DV-related immigration case. And I took it because I just couldn't say no. I couldn't say no. And it's pending right now.
Can you talk a little bit about the comprehensive, holistic approach that the clinic takes in terms of social workers, our partners, other agencies that we work with? And then if you could also touch on the Know Your Rights workshops that we've been putting on at least prior to COVID.
Sure. So we recently hired a social worker in our to help in our domestic violence practice. And the reason we hired a social worker was for a couple of reasons. One, domestic violence clients, and I'm going to let Rebecca expand on this, but they have a lot of needs in addition to legal. And we did not feel that we were really serving them properly by not having a social worker on board. That was the first reason. The other reason was the attorney And that's not what they've been trained to do. They did a really good job pretending, but that's not what they're trained to do. So better to have a social worker who actually does that kind of work. Rebecca, do you want to expand on this a little bit?
Sure. We play social workers on TV all the time, and I'm grateful to be able to do that work. But you're right, Nancy. It felt it felt wrong because I only have one weapon, and that's my legal weapon. So we were really fortunate to be able to hire a social worker to be able to do a lot of resource collaboration. And so she doesn't provide clinical services. She makes sure that anyone who has a housing need that's not legal, but obviously that person would talk to Noreen, but food insecurity, rent assistance, all of the things that every single client that I have has. By the time a domestic violence survivor gets to me, they have way more than just legal needs. So when I started in my position, it was clear to me that social services operated in silos. And I think that there are two reasons for that. I think the first reason is because when you only have a certain amount of hours in the day, you want to devote those hours to direct client services and not to outreach to other organizations. And I understand that. And then more cynically, it's because everybody is really nervous about their numbers. Everyone has to meet their numbers for grant purposes. But what was clear to me immediately was that we're not competitors. And in fact, just the opposite. Someone who comes to our agency can be counted, in terms of our client count, and can also be counted by somebody else if we do that warm handoff to another agency to get them help with job training or food insecurity or any of the other myriad needs that they have as a result of the trauma through which they've been, counseling services, for instance. And so instead of operating so isolated, we've worked very diligently to kind of break down those barriers and build bridges and build collaboration. In fact, we are hosting a series of panels next month for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we have 10 other agencies right now confirmed to sit on panels with us to discuss how important this work is right now and how important these relationships are. And so that's really how we've responded. And then obviously we don't, in my practice, do a lot of know your rights because people don't show up to know your rights presentations on domestic violence. But what we've done to respond to that need is we are now partnering with Vernon Hills Library, and we are going to record know your rights presentations in a series of 4 short presentations that will be posted on their website, so that so victims of domestic violence can access that resource, watch a video about how to identify if you're a victim, how to identify local resources, how to be an ally without having to give up your anonymity. So we are going to partner with libraries to post online videos that will be helpful to people who couldn't attend or who wouldn't attend a Know Your Rights presentation on domestic violence. But the queen of all Know Your Rights presentations is Leah. She has been creative and singularly dedicated to making sure that every corner of our service territory is educated on what their rights are. So I'm going to defer to Leah to answer more about what they do.
Thank you. So in 2019, we did over 100 presentations, Know Your Rights, How to Be an Ally, DACA, Public Charge, and also with Rebecca, immigration relief for victims of domestic violence and certain crimes. So we've been doing that also with short-term guardianships and safety planning if you're undocumented. So we were doing that, a lot of that in person to libraries, social service organizations, partnered organizations, townships, government offices, universities, and then that all went to Zoom. So now we're still doing them on Zoom. We were on the Waukegan Public Library. We were with Center for Immigrant Progress. We've partnered with Partnership for Our Communities in Palatine. We're doing a town hall in Hanover Park Village Hall with their chief of police and their mayor to talk about know your rights and how to be an ally. We're doing another presentation with the DePaul Law School Immigration Asylum Clinic based on, again, Violence Against Women's Act in October for DV Awareness Month. So we're trying to do that. And we've had presentations with just a person, but through Zoom, because people can watch it anytime. Most of our presentations have had over 1,000 unique views. And so we're very proud of that. And we're there in English or in Spanish, us solely, or partner with other organizations. We had a joint panel with the Lake County State's Attorney and to talk about immigration relief for victims of domestic violence. And it's really important to educate. And there is that fine line, especially with DACA and public charge, some of the things that have been changing due to litigation. There's a fine line between educating and fear. But we feel like in order to have the community members regain their power is to educate. And so that is important. So we will continue doing these presentations. Most of them have been after hours, and we're fine with that because whatever is necessary. And we try to go where the clients will be. If they'll be home on Sunday evening so they can join us on a Zoom live or Facebook live where they post their questions, great, and we'll do it. We've been doing them on Sundays with the Evanston Latinos in Evanston and on weeknights with other organizations throughout.
And just to jump in, we're going to obviously try to do some housing know your rights as well. We just spoke with Niles Township. We're going to try to do a know your rights for the township and for the social workers who work for their township to better educate them to how to sort of spot the legal issues. What would be cases that we could help people with, how they can help some of their township themselves too. So that's another thing that we're going to be doing, and also we're going to be doing something with the Wheeling Library soon, and probably sort of closer to home, hopefully in Highwood as well. We also, like, as far as holistic services that we offer, I think what's so unique about working here from the places that I've worked before, I mean, immigration and domestic violence and housing, sure, other agencies may have practice groups in those areas as well. But I think what's really unique is how we handle cases that come in. And so just in the short time that I've been here, we've already had, I think, at least 2 clients where, somebody who's come in who's undocumented, a victim of domestic violence, and concerned about where they're going to be living, right? And so we've all jumped in, all 3 of us together, somebody from each practice group, and we'll just do a conference call. We'll do one call so that we can talk to somebody so that they don't have to talk, and set up an intake with 3 separate people, tell their story 3 separate times. I mean, one of the things that, we recognize is that it's so difficult for somebody who's suffering trauma to tell their story once, much less have to keep repeating it to, different people who want a little bit of a different piece of that story. So I think the idea was really, to try to provide a more holistic environment for clients as well.
And that's why I want to just jump in. So, Alicia, who's on the phone, she's our director of client services, and she is our first person of contact for a lot of these clients. So when she sees this and she knows, and she can introduce spot with the best of them, she sends out a very detailed email to all of us saying, we have someone who needs all 3 help, and she will list out everything. And that's how we join together. And because of COVID, if this was pre-COVID, all she would do is yell out what's going on, and we would all just sort of huddle over her phone telling her, I could do this day, I could do that day, but we're not there. And I so miss that. But what she does is write this perfect email saying, okay, this is what she needs. Everyone has it? Great. And she does it, and we get it done. And so we've become extremely efficient, but we do miss huddling over that one phone or in our conference room or all barging into Susan's room to ask her about something.
Believe me, I miss it too. Um, other questions? Anything else? Really, we really welcome it. Please feel free. Yes, Leslie, I see you raising your hand.
Sorry, if you don't mind doing round two. Rebecca touched on this briefly when she mentioned the pool of volunteer attorneys. And during this time, I think what a lot of us have seen is people and entities like law firms that are interested in knowing, that are feeling more of a connection and are wanting to do more. Obviously, from a fundraising perspective, our priority is raising funds. But I think as a secondary thing for lawyers or law firms that do want to help in volunteering time, what options are there? I know that's a capacity issue a little bit in managing that help, but I know it's a broad question, but if there's a thing or two that comes to mind as we're talking with friends or my spouses, law firms or things like that, or our own law firms, just what types of things are options of ways for them to get involved in the clinic?
Well, I think that housing is a really great way for somebody to get involved. If you're a lawyer and practicing or even not practicing, I think that we're hoping to train people who would be able to go in to handle some of these non-payment of rent eviction cases that we expect to see once the moratorium's lifted. Usually a non-payment of rent eviction case is not like a complex case for a lawyer to resolve. Many of these cases probably won't have like a typical legal defense. It's like it's a COVID-19 defense, right? So we're kind of trying to hopefully train people who would be willing to go in. It might be a little easier because things are over Zoom. And we also train some of our volunteer attorneys to help with rental assistance. So we had, somebody help with the IDA rental assistance recently. And so rental assistance in the future is also a way for people to help out in pro bono. The other thing that we're kind of thinking about sort of long-term, maybe when things are a little less crazy, is to do something more like a security deposit clinic for pro bono attorneys to help out with sort of a discrete issue that won't involve a lot of complex litigation or anything. It would be much more discreet.
It's tougher in my practice because to work with a domestic violence survivor, we require the 40 hours of domestic violence training. So we are a little picky about the legal role that somebody can play for the domestic violence practice because of that social work aspect. We don't just let anybody come in and volunteer in that way. That being said, I have a lot of other work to do and I am always looking for people. We do a lot of, policy work. We've got a lot going on for domestic violence awareness. And we're going to do a big push after October to, every month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month stuff. So somebody who's interested in policy, somebody who's interested in community organizing for domestic violence, those are absolutely things that we would work with someone on a volunteer basis to do. But someone who wanted to come in and sort of do a one-off for representing a victim of domestic violence, that's not something that we would do without the 40-hour training.
So similar with DV immigration, there's so much gray, and there's so many ways to get immigration wrong. And I am very, again, protective of our clients, because a lot of our clients have come to us after being a victim of a notario or going through several other private practice attorneys that did not do their case accurately. And we're there to try to fix their mistakes. So in order to help with a case from start to finish with immigration, especially a complicated case, we would require either immigration experience, or you have to take the Comprehensive Overview of Immigration Law, COIL, course through Catholic Charities Clinic. And then even with that, it's a very good just overview of immigration. You would have to get a lot of hand-holding and training through me. But with that, there's other things that you can do. So we have short-term guardianships for minor U.S. citizen children, minor children of undocumented immigrants. That is a very simple form that is even simpler because I believe our previous Director of Immigration, Jennifer Gongerchowitz, created a simpler form for that. So we've updated that. Doesn't even need to be notarized, and you can just sign it. They can sign it. It's very easy. So we can do a clinic. We can do a CLE to teach you how to do that, and you can fill one of those out. DACA, if the litigation goes the right way, and if DACA continues based on the 2012 memo, an executive order, then we can do DACA trainings. So there's other things that you can do. You can shadow. I've had a lot of volunteers over the years shadow me at a lot of our offsite immigration clinics where they learn to how to issue spot and deal with cases. But again, we handle 99.9% of all of our cases in-house. But if you do have that experience, if you have that passion, then you can take on a case if you have that experience. And also with asylum. We see a lot of asylum cases. We can't take a lot of them because, for every one asylum case, that is 10 to 15 other cases that we cannot take on. So if we can have someone who is experienced in asylum law, then to please, and if you would like to take on a case, we would be more than happy to have you. We get a lot of them. We only take on about 1%. We have 2 currently pending in immigration court. And I do have asylum experience, and I just know how much work and hours it takes for them. So we just can't take them all on.
And in addition to the examples that were just given, we were, up until COVID started, doing power of attorney clinics, and that was actually a really popular pro bono project that we would do with corporations and with law firms. It has been, because seniors are so at risk, we cannot do them in person, and we still haven't quite figured out how to do them remotely, although we are trying to figure that out. But we did get DocuSign, so we're hoping we've got enough tools in place that we'll be able to start that back up soon. But that's been some of the hesitation on that. What's great about those clinics is that we tend to do a 1.5-hour CLE before, and then you're pretty much ready to do it. And then you work with the senior power of attorney for financial, power of attorney for health. And it's a really wonderful benefit for a senior. So that's another way people can help us. So we're hoping to get those back up and running soon. As soon as
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
All of you, you're amazing.
Thank you. Other questions that you might have, thoughts, pontifications? Well, it is 7:56, and I think
Susan, can I just say, if anyone wants to send me a couple of sentences, I can often put things on social media and get volunteers. So if there's something, Rebecca was talking about people doing some sort of organizing or something like that, sometimes I can do things like that. I don't have time to do the things. I used to do the things, but now I can do the things of trying to get people who do the things.
You're amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lauren.
Make sure you hear that tonight, because you are really amazing.
She is amazing.
Thank you. So are you. This is an amazing thing. Nancy's right. It doesn't feel like 5 years. First of all, it feels like 1 year, but it also seems to be like 20 years. So it's an amazing, unbelievable thing.
It has been a wild ride. It has been a wild ride, with this year being one of the wilder ones, or maybe not so wild, depending on how you look at it. But anyway, with that, we're getting close to 8 o'clock. If nobody has any other questions, I just want to thank everyone so much for coming tonight. I think as has been made clear, we have tremendous need. All of our practice areas are at capacity. I could literally hire 3 more attorneys tomorrow, and they would all be busy. And so what that brings up is that our need is often outpaces our funding. And so I would say to you that if there's anything here that has moved you tonight and you were so inspired, please consider making a donation. That is what keeps us going. You can go to our website, www.nslegalaid.org, and press our donate button, and we will very much appreciate it. Any amount, of course. So if that is all, then thank you so much, everyone. We really appreciated talking to you tonight and just letting you know about what's up with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Jamie, tell Kim I say hi. Kimberly, I say hi.